Welcome to episode 96 of Sustainability Defined. For today's episode, we are bringing back the Hot Commodities series that you all know and love. In this series, we break down a commodity's entire life cycle in the global supply chain, its history, and ways to support the sustainable development and consumption of this resource. So far, we've covered matcha and chocolate, and now it's time to go bananas. Woo! I'm your host, Cecilia.
And I'm your host, Nathra. And Cecilia, if it wasn't for copyright, I want all you definers to know that we would cue Gwen Stefani right now.
Cueing Gwen Stefani in my mind right now, Nathra.
B-A-N-A-N-A-S.
Literally, there truly is no holla back, girl. This episode's hot commodity is bananas, as you may have guessed. The world's most sensitive fruit is getting its entire own episode today.
They really are so sensitive. I mean, I swear I look at a banana and it turns black. And today we are going to be giving you the full cradle to grave on the sensitive fruit, bananas. Our interview portion is going to be so fun. We're thrilled to welcome Jenny from Equifruit, a company that's focused on farmers and responsibly grown fruit and ensuring fair wages and lifestyle for those farmers and those producers. So we're excited to hear from her. And without further ado, let's get bananas.
Let's do it, Nathra.
So bananas may seem like a silly little fruit, but approaching the origins, distribution, agriculture, history, and current events of bananas requires care because these seemingly innocent fruits have a very, very complicated history.
Today, we'll explore everything from production on the farms through supply chain logistics and distribution, all the way to end-of-life considerations. Along the way, we'll highlight some of the biggest social and environmental impacts this commodity has had around the world as well.
Like most commodities that we have covered and will cover in this series, there is a darker history of colonization, land grabs, erasure of people and culture, and systemic oppression and exploitation of people. This still happens today, and we'd be pretty remiss to not acknowledge that. So in covering this topic, Cecilia and I will start with the history of bananas and their diaspora into the global commodity that it's known as today, and then move into how they're grown and their environmental impacts.
We will handle this topic and history with the care it deserves, but as always, definers, we encourage you to do your own due diligence and dive deeper into these commodities and histories and continue to keep learning. This is a really interesting commodity, not only because it's super popular, but according to researchers at MIT, in 2019, banana growers exported more than 21 million tons of bananas worldwide. But it differs from past commodities we have done like chocolate and matcha. Bananas don't have the shelf life that chocolate and matcha do. So the question I have today is, how are grocery stores managing to keep a steady supply of ripe bananas year-round?
This is something we definitely don't think enough about, but let's start answering this by first defining the production stage of this commodity. According to our research, bananas are grown in more than 150 countries, originating in Southeast Asia, and they basically began to globalize in the 14th century due to the development of railroads and international trade. So they are the fourth largest crop in the world. And in the past 30 years in the US, banana consumption has increased by over 175%. A piping hot commodity, definers.
A super piping feisty hot commodity, Nathra. And a fun history fact here, might I add, the bananas during this time of origination are not the bananas that we know today. Mm-hmm. They had large, hard seeds and not very tasty pulp. They were thick, starchy, and just built different.
So funny, because whenever I go to India, we have so many different banana varieties and they all taste so different. Like some will leave the most filmiest taste in your mouth because of starch content. But my favorites are the small baby bananas and the red traditional ones.
Ugh, it sounds delicious, Nathan, but I've only tried the one banana.
I feel like you must have had okay, because when I went to Puerto Rico, shout out Bad Bunny, I also had platanos and maduros, which are a different banana variety. Mm-hmm. So there's so many great ones out there.
It's funny you mentioned this because to me, plátano is just banana in Spanish. So I'm like, okay.
You're like, I told you I had that before.
Yeah, maybe I have had those, but It's funny because those heirloom varieties of bananas in Southeast Asia that were, introduced during that time of origination were then brought into the Western world through Alexander the Great around 327 BC when his army invaded India. But these bananas still had the large seeds that we talked about until two bananas were selectively crossbred around 650 AD, so a lot of years in between, giving us the seedless banana that we have today. But here is the catch. Since bananas today are now seedless, they can't be planted. Rather, they are propagated from the cuttings of the, quote, banana mother plant, making all bananas basically identical clones.
Wow, so there's basically no genetic diversity amongst them, huh? So we're like eating inbred bananas.
Inbred might be a strong word, but in a weird way, yes, there's no genetic diversity. Now, you may have heard of monoculture definers and the risks associated with it pertaining to climate change. This is certainly true for bananas. An example here of the risks with monoculture and climate change. In the 1940s, the main type of banana was a variety called the Gros Michel. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I really hope so. And it became nearly extinct when exposed to a pathogen known as the TR1, wiping out nearly all the bananas. The banana we know today is of the Cavendish variety, which was resistant to the TR1 pathogen. So it lived on while all these other bananas were basically becoming extinct.
Survival of the fittest.
No, literally. And the Cavendish is the most traded variety of banana today, accounting for half of global production.
Such a weird name, but upon further research, we figured out it was named after the 6th Duke of Devonshire, William Cavendish.
William Cavendish.
Right, so Bridgerton.
Literally.
Whose gardener actually in the 1800s first cultivated the variety, so justice for that gardener.
Classic, but now the Cavendish banana is at risk of extinction with the introduction of the new TR4 pathogen. But fear not, definers. Our science has advanced since the 1940s, thank God. Scientists are now working on genetically modifying traits of the Cavendish banana for the fruit to better resist disease. But
there's always a but.
And there is always a but, Netra. Global cooperation between scientists, governments, trading organizations, farmers, and corporations is required to mitigate the risk of extinction. So the real solution is for farmers to start planting several varieties of bananas to avoid this monoculture risk. But again, these farmers have to be supported to start planting several varieties.
Isn't it crazy how biodiversity is the solution to mostly everything that we're suffering with? It's just such a game to get anyone to commit to it.
It's right under our nose too. Come on,
except
guys,
it's written on the walls and we're not listening.
Yeah.
But quick detour on monoculture right there, definers. We went a bit bananas. Hope you're still with us. Let's get back to production. So now the pressing question. How do bananas get from the plantation to the grocery store? Let's start with how they're grown. We mentioned earlier that bananas are seedless and are thus propagated from the parent plant, kind of like identical clones of one another. So they're not trees, but they're actually perennial plants, making the banana an herb. Very weird.
That is so weird, Netra. I always sort of imagined my bananas growing like coconuts.
They sort of do. Just the plant is shorter to the ground. I grew up surrounded by banana fields and farms in South India. So we eat off banana leaves in our culture. So bananas are very embedded in what we and everything that we do. But
yummy.
They require hot tropical temperatures to grow, like India, as do a lot of other commodities. And they're mainly grown in Central America, Asia, and Africa. Typically, bananas are grown in large plantations that have building to package and process and transport the product to the shipping port.
This is an important distinction for this commodity because it is plucked before it is ripe. Bananas are harvested green, still hard and starchy, which is why we see green bananas still at the grocery store and all other colors of bananas. They're inclusive. If they were picked after ripening, they would be mushy and ready for banana bread by the time they reach our stores, right? So workers cut down entire bunches, which can weigh up to 100 pounds. This is very intensive laboral work. These bunches are carried on shoulders or by cable systems to the processing stations in these plantations, and it's truly backbreaking work, often done in extreme heat.
Right. And so on the farm, the bananas are then plucked by hand by farmers and are then moved along to a metal track to a sorting system so they can be inspected and bunched up. They're washed, often in water treated with fungicides, and then comes the plastic. Each hand of banana gets wrapped in plastic. Sometimes individual bananas are wrapped, which makes zero sense. If only they had their own natural packaging.
If
only. This protects them during shipping, but also creates like a staggering amount of plastic waste. We're talking thousands of tons of single-use plastic that often ends up in landfills or worse, in the ocean. Packers then laid the sorted bananas into pellet boxes where trucks take them to shipping ports.
Nathra, dare I say this is a fairly simple production compared to the other hot commodities we've talked about?
Dare you say, Cecilia? Bananas are the finished product, not like matcha and chocolate, which have to quite literally be grinded, fermented, and processed into the product that they become when they reach us. Bananas already come with their own packaging. They're slaying. Although, as we just touched on, sometimes they're still wrapped. One time I saw a banana wrapped in cling wrap at the grocery store and I was so pissed.
I mean, that's fair, Nathra. Leave it to the humans, to find any possible way to create more waste. Anyway, bananas are typically shipped by boat. They are placed in what's called container terminals, which can be carried from trucks to the port to the boat. These containers are hooked up to electricity to keep the containers at a cool temperature so that bananas do not ripen. And here's where it gets interesting. These containers are loaded onto massive cargo ships, and bananas have to travel at very specific temperatures, typically 56 to 58 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 14 degrees Celsius. If it is too cold, they get chill damage, and if it is too warm, they ripen too fast.
This is what I meant when we said the world's most sensitive fruit.
Literally, that's what I was about to say. Like, she's so sensitive.
Sensitive.
The journey from, say, Ecuador to the U.S. takes about a week. And the entire time, these bananas are literally frozen in time and suspended in their current state, which is that green type of banana.
After they reach the ports in the U.S., they are then transported by rail or truck to distribution centers. This is where they go to all the grocery stores that we purchase them from. So these centers are either owned and operated by Chiquita or another big retailer. At these distribution centers, companies like Chiquita inject the rooms where bananas are stored, called ripening rooms, with ethylene gas to restart the ripening process. Ethylene is a natural plant hormone that triggers the ripening process in bananas. This way, they can control the gas exposure to achieve one of the 3 ripeness levels requested by each retail store: hard green, green, or yellow. This is where you kind of see that variety on your shelves. Then, when the banana reach their requested ripeness levels, they are transported and delivered to retailers.
And then finally, bananas hit the shelves.
Finally.
And here's something most people don't know. Grocery stores lose money on bananas.
Wait, hold on. After all of that, they lose money?
After all of that, Nathra, they're losing money. Bananas are what's called a loss leader. They're priced so low that stores barely break even or actually end up losing money. But bananas get you in the door. You come for that cheap banana, but you leave with $100 of groceries and so many things you did not need. And this is why bananas are always near the front of the store. It's strategic marketing. Jenny in our interview actually touches on this more, so stay tuned. But store employees monitor bananas constantly. They will rotate stock. They'll remove the overripe ones. They keep displays full. They make it look pretty. It's truly a whole science.
How manipulative.
I know, right? I feel a little manipulated.
A little gaslit. And then you buy these bananas. You take them home.
You're coming home with
me. You're coming home with me. Maybe you eat them within a few days, and maybe they sit on your counter or turn brown, and you feel guilty, and you eventually throw them away or make banana bread. But
please don't throw them away. Please make banana bread. Come on. banana
Right?
pancakes.
I feel like bananas are often like one of the most wasted things.
How? Get into banana mug cakes, guys. Come on.
I'm not even gonna lie to you, Cecilia. I hate banana bread.
Shut up, Nathan.
I
Why?
don't love the taste of bananas, but I have really been enjoying like a banana milk matcha.
Okay.
You guys know how I feel about matcha.
Yeah, she's a matcha girl.
But the average American eats about 27 pounds of bananas per year. That's roughly 90 bananas.
Sheesh.
And each one of them took this entire journey from plantation to processing to ship to ripening room to store to you.
That is poetic, Nathra. But I'm not gonna lie, it makes me feel a little weird. Sometimes I forget how disconnected we have become from nature, to have bananas all year round. Even when it's like there's a winter storm, we have bananas.
Right. And to be quite vulnerable with you guys for a second, sometimes researching these commodities can be kind of jarring because you understand that nature has become a commodity in itself and something to be boxed up and sold.
Oof.
Thinking about ripening gases and all these processes is intimidating, and it really brings up the question of eating seasonally and locally and supporting small farmers versus, let's say, the Chiquitas of the world.
Uh-oh.
There are pros and cons to both, and this is not to demonize anyone, but this is a choice and consciousness I'll be bringing with me to the grocery store next time.
And there she is. You mentioned her, Chiquita. We cannot talk about bananas without talking about Chiquita.
Okay, Cecilia, you have me hooked. I know when we were doing our pre-scripting and our planning for this episode, you were telling me that there is some scandal with Chiquita, and you mentioned the scandal a couple of times to me during our episode prep, so please tell us the story.
This is quite the scandal, definers. Grab your popcorn, sit on the couch, I don't know, whatever you're doing, turn it up in the car, whatever. Here we go. Chiquita Brands International is a corporation that owns or contracts banana plantations, distribution networks, and sales operations around the world. You guys have seen the stickers on your bananas probably, and probably eaten at least one Chiquita banana and sticker in your lifetime.
And sticker.
You never know. Now, the tea is, in 2007, Chiquita pleaded guilty to knowingly providing material support to the AUC, a paramilitary organization widely known for its violent attacks on Colombian civilians and designated a foreign terrorist organization by the U.S. government. Between 1997 and 2004, Chiquita reportedly paid over 1.7 million US dollars to groups like the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia, the AUC.
Wait, so a fruit company was literally funding terrorists?
Literally.
Why?
Well, back in the 1990s and the early 2000s, Colombia's banana growing regions were incredibly dangerous. Paramilitaries, guerrilla groups, drug cartels were constantly clashing with each other, and farmers, workers, and businesses, civilians, were caught in the middle. For Chiquita, which is a massive profit-driven company, the choice was framed as survival. Either pay for protection or risk kidnappings, attacks, and destructions of plantations and their workers.
The keyword framed here.
Yes. But even if the payments were framed as protection, the reality was that this money fueled groups responsible for murder, forced displacement, and absolutely terrorizing communities in Colombia.
So Chiquita said that the payments were made to protect its workers and operations amid ongoing armed conflict in banana growing regions. That's what they said.
That's exactly what they said, Nathra. And the scandal raises huge questions about corporate responsibility. It shows how global supply chains, especially something so seemingly simple as bananas, can intersect with conflict, human rights abuses, and ethical dilemmas. Even today, Chiquita still sources bananas from Colombia, but the case is a reminder that operations in conflict zones carry enormous social and moral risk. It also highlights why transparency, certification programs, and ethical sourcing are so important for consumers and companies alike.
Right. And the crazy thing is, this isn't even the first time banana companies have been involved in some seriously problematic stuff, right? Because when I was doing research for this episode, I kept seeing the term Banana Republic pop up everywhere. And no, I'm not talking about the store, But after researching this further, it's wild to think that they would even name a store after this. But that's another conversation.
But we need to talk about this. So, Banana Republic, most people use this phrase to describe a dysfunctional government, or as Nathan said, maybe the store at the mall where you get your casual business clothes.
Right.
But the actual origin of Banana Republic is so much darker than the khakis.
Right. The term was actually coined by a writer in 1904 to describe Honduras, but it came to define almost every country in Central America and parts of the Caribbean during the early 20th century. And here's the definition. A banana republic is a politically unstable country with an economy dependent on a single export commodity, in this case, bananas. And that commodity basically is controlled by foreign corporate interests, in this case, the Chiquitas of the world.
And when we say controlled, we don't mean they had good lobbyists. These companies or organizations literally ran these entire countries.
Right. And you might think, how could they run the entire country off of a single commodity? And it's because for most of these countries, these commodities were fueling their economy. Mm-hmm. Bananas or maybe their number one export. So you have millions of livelihoods depending on this.
It's completely intricate.
Completely intricate, a complete wicked problem, as we've talked about a lot on the podcast.
Wicked!
And here's where a really big player enters the story of banana republics. So enter the United Fruit Company. If you've ever heard of UFC, no, not that UFC. You need to understand.
Please, we will never talk about that UFC here.
Okay, good. You need to understand this, right? This company was essentially a corporate nation state. Founded in 1899, United Fruit Company grew to own millions of acres of land across Latin America. Like, they owned basically this region, along with railroads, telegraph lines, shipping fleets. So not only were they controlling land, they were controlling transport, they were controlling communities, right? They had more power in countries like Guatemala, Honduras, Colombia than the actual governments itself. They were enacting colonization, to put it plainly. They were ruling these countries.
And they were ruthless about protecting the pseudo-colonizing and power. Here's how it worked. UFC would negotiate extremely favorable land deals with local governments, often through bribery or political pressure. They would pay minimal taxes, control infrastructure, and employ local workers at poverty wages. And if a government ever tried to push back, well, UFC had some high friends. I mean, what?
Had some high
friends. Okay, God. If a government ever tried to push back, well, UFC had friends in high places.
The most infamous example was Guatemala, 1954. So the democratically elected president, Jacobo Arbenz, tried to implement land reform, basically taking unused land from UFC, United Fruit Company, and redistributing it to peasant farmers. He even offered to pay UFC the value they'd claimed on their taxes. Seems reasonable, right? He wants to give the land back to the people.
But UFC said no, and they did something wild. They lobbied the U.S. government, claiming Arbenz was a communist threat. The CIA organized a coup, they overthrew Arbenz, and installed a military dictator. Wait. Is this familiar?
Is this play about us?
No, literally. This kicked off decades of brutal civil war in Guatemala, all because of bananas.
And it wasn't just Guatemala. There were similar interventions in Honduras, Colombia, and elsewhere. And in 1928, Colombian workers went on strike against UFC's terrible conditions. The company called in the military. Soldiers opened fire on striking workers and their families. Estimated ranges from dozens to thousands of people were killed, and it literally became known as the Banana Massacre.
And in 1970, the United Fruit Company rebranded. You know them today as Chiquita. Same company,
Whoa.
Same story, new sticker.
That is pretty terrifying, Cecilia.
Pretty crazy, Netra.
So the Chiquita paying paramilitaries in the 2000s is literally the same company that was orchestrating coups in the 1950s.
Same company, same patterns of exploitation, just a different decade and a different name. Now, to Chiquita's credit, and I use that term loosely,
Very loosely.
they've made some changes since the 2007 scandal. They no longer fund terrorist organizations, obviously. They've implemented some new labor and environmental standards, but the legacy of extraction, exploitation, and violence doesn't just disappear with a guilty plea and a fine.
The power dynamics that created banana republics are still baked into the global banana trade and even just supply chains across the world. Even today, a handful of massive companies, Chiquita, Dole, Del Monte, control the majority of the international banana market. Small farmers struggle to compete. Workers in banana producing countries often face low wages, exposure to pesticides, and union busting.
The banana that we're buying at 60 cents a pound didn't get that cheap by accident, definers. Someone somewhere is paying that real cost.
And all of this history really shows how complicated banana supply chains can be and still are, and why companies need to think carefully about who they are sourcing from and under what conditions. That's why initiatives like fair trade come in. Fair trade certification helps ensure that farmers are paid fairly, work in safe conditions, and that their communities benefit from the profits rather than the armed groups or exploitative intermediaries.
With fair trade, there's more transparency so consumers can feel confident that their bananas aren't linked to violence or human rights abuses. And that brings us to today's guest, Jenny from Equifruit, who's taking ethical sourcing even further by working directly with farmers to reduce waste and create sustainable, transparent supply chains. We'll hear how Equifruit is making sure every step from farm to table is responsible, efficient, and environmentally conscious.
Okay, definers, we've talked about how bananas go from the farm to the grocery store, and we've also covered some scandals and inequities throughout the supply chain. Now we're here with someone who is genuinely changing the game. Welcome, Jenny Coleman, president of Equifruit and self-proclaimed banana badass, to the podcast.
Thank you.
Jenny was named one of Canada's 100 most powerful women by the Women's Executive Network and Canada's most admired CEO by Waterstone Human Capital. She's a vocal advocate for ethical sourcing and challenging supermarkets and consumers to recognize the hidden cost of cheap bananas, which is reflected truly at her work at Equifruit, which has been one of Canada's top growing companies and leading the Fair Trade certified banana importer movement in North America.
Incredible introduction, Netra. Jenny, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. We are so excited to talk about all things bananas. But before we get into the bananas, would you mind starting off telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved working in this space, what your background is to lead you to, find this amazing company?
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm really happy to be here today. So I have a very unusual background for a business person in that I earned 2 master's degrees earlier in my life, one in German
Okay.
and the other in library and information science. So it's
Ooh.
not a direct path to running a banana empire, but that's how life works its way out.
You're telling me they don't have a banana degree. They don't have a master's in banana.
Yeah, I don't have a banana degree. I'm bit by bit working on my banana doctorate through Equifruit, but no, I'm not actually signed up anywhere. It's just, after I did this second master's in library and information science, I worked in that industry for about 14 minutes before moving over to business. Then I had a, 15-year career in more traditional business. I worked for a Canadian company that had offices all over the world. I was in Zurich and Berlin and Beijing.
Ooh,
Back to
the
Berlin.
German studies came in handy right
Yeah,
there.
well, that was one of the reasons. Yeah, they're like, oh, this person speaks German, so we're going to send her over to that office. But they did send me to China without me speaking a word of Mandarin. No, I worked hard at learning Chinese while I was there. It was
Oh,
awesome.
wow.
That's another podcast. And I came across an ad for a business that was for sale that didn't say bananas in the title, but it did say that the business had high ethical standards and would be suitable for somebody who needed flexible work. And I just thought, yeah, sign me up. And
Yeah.
yeah, I met
And
the
here we
broker,
are.
and here I am. I remember opening this folder of information in the meeting with the broker and thinking, yeah, bananas, fun. Like, who doesn't like bananas, right?
Wow. So what I'm hearing is you just decided to buy a business.
Incredible.
Yeah, well, I'd had a real itch for entrepreneurship for a long time. And I had all kinds of crazy business ideas. But, the beauty of buying a business is that you're not starting from zero.
It's crazy how life can present itself in opportunities that you would have never thought about. So
Yeah,
you never know what's around the corner.
no,
I
you
loved
don't.
that.
Yeah, you really don't. And now this company, or our vision of global fair trade banana domination, this has really become my life's calling. We're so intent as a team on changing the banana industry through fair trade.
Yeah, and that's actually what stood out to me when I was researching guests to bring on to interview for this podcast. I really wanted to talk about bananas. I was always intrigued about the Chiquita scandal that happened, I think in the late 90s. And Equifruit stood out to me because of their emphasis on the 100% fair trade certification, and also the fact that it's women owned stood out to me as well. I love the creativity behind the business. The website design stood out to me. I just really wanted to sit down, have a conversation with you about the company and how you managed to shape the vision of this global business, really, and the decisions that you made as a company. How did, I don't know, your role play in that, in helping the company become fair trade oriented?
Yeah, so the company that I bought was already fair trade. They were fair trade from their first shipping container of bananas that they brought into Montreal in 2007. So when I bought the business in 2013, we already had that path and those values. I think that what changed when I came on board is that we came to understand that our impact was going to happen with volume. The more bananas that we were able to sell on fair trade terms, the more impact we would have to small growers and farm workers back at origin. And so we really pivoted from this subsistence model, just this maintenance of the business, to growth. We want fair trade standards to be the basis for responsible procurement by grocery stores. We want, our kids to be like, what? There was a time when bananas weren't fair trade?
There was unfair trade?
Yeah, what's that all
What is
about?
that? Yeah.
And everything that we do as a business is thinking about how we can amplify our impact, how much more we can sell, not from a profit motive, though we are a business. This isn't a charity. We still make profit as a private business. But our goal is really that top line. How much more can we sell, which is going to generate impact to people in the supply chain that have been forgotten for the last 100 years, let's say.
Absolutely. And let's dive a little bit deeper into fair trade and what that means. There's obviously fair trade, that we've seen that label, right? The logo, that's with a capital F, fair trade.
Yeah.
And then there's fair space trade with a lowercase f, the general term. Can you explain to the definers the difference between these two and how they play into your business?
So, fair space trade, in two words, is just an expression to mean kind of decency in global trading relations in a very generic form. Whereas when I speak about the fair trade standards that guide Equifruit or that we abide by, I'm talking about fair trade, one word, capital F, which is an international certification. It's the best viewed certification, at least by members of the World Banana Forum, of which Equifruit is a member. So when I speak about standards, I'm really speaking specifically about the standards that we have to respect through fair trade. So I'll give you the Fair Trade 101. I'll try not to, lose listeners right now because this can get really technical. But
A crash course.
for our growers, they need to respect standards on sustainable production, sustainable economically, socially, and environmentally. So economic may be fair wages, living wages for your workers. It might be transparent contracts detailing working conditions for people. That's of great economic importance to your workers. For socially, we might think about no child labor, no forced labor, gender equity, obviously occupational health and safety on the farm. So let's be clear, fair trade is kind of an umbrella standard that covers both conventional, non-organic, and organic production, but it is in itself not an organic certification. So there are a bunch of standards there. Probably the most important is regulating the use of pesticides. So there are some pesticides which are a great big no always, or on a red list. So if our growers produce fruit according to these standards, these are going to come in at a higher price point than just normal uncertified production. And so growers are going to be looking for a price that covers that cost of sustainable production. And that's what the fair trade system then puts into place. They put into place a list of fair trade minimum prices, which are set to represent that cost of sustainable production. So fair trade looks to invest in the future of these families and these communities through that fair trade premium.
Right.
We've talked a lot about this on the Hot Commodities series of, as a consumer, we just don't have much look or buy-in into what happens downstream in the supply chain. We don't see the hands of the workers who pick our fruit, who process our goods, who pick these raw materials. And it's truly eye-opening, I'm sure, for someone like you who's probably visited these sites firsthand and seen these things and seen the complete scale of the life cycle of a banana and the supply chain of a banana. And with that in mind, when we're at the grocery store, we see really cheap prices for bananas. I know sometimes I'm almost like, oh my gosh, 49 cents a pound, like that's a lot, like that's crazy. And then you're talking about how that's considered extremely cheap. What would the price tag on an Equifruit fair trade banana look like in an average grocery store? And how have you seen consumers responding to the demand for ethical produce? I'm curious.
Equifruit, as you said in the intro, we've been on Canada's top growing companies list for 4 years straight. So just that tells you that it's more than just my mom buying our bananas.
Yeah.
Mom's always the biggest fan.
She sure is, but she can't eat 25,000 cases of bananas.
I can only imagine how many bananas
just
that
on
is.
her own, yeah. I think just our growth alone tells a story about the interest in our product. As for the price of an Equifruit banana, we are not the final retailer, and each customer that we sell to has their own pricing strategies. So what I can tell you is that we estimate that in the United States, a retailer would have to increase the price of bananas by about 20 cents per pound in order to respect the fair trade prices that we are selling our bananas at.
And you're making the world of a difference for supporting a
Right.
powerful supply chain. We talk about this so frequently on the podcast. I'm going to drop it. We vote with your dollar.
I was waiting for it, Netra.
This is what we say like every episode, Jenny. But essentially, it's like, yeah, as consumers, we have purchasing power, and 20 cents in the grand scheme of things to support an industry that's going to grow and really change the face of the banana supply chain forever. I think that's amazing. I think that's one of the best
Right.
investments you can make.
It's a small price to the consumer, but the world of a difference, like you said, to the producers.
Yeah, no, really, bananas are too cheap. bananas are simply too cheap. They've been kept irrationally cheap, artificially cheap for a very, very, very long time.
I'm curious, you brought this up. What is some of the major pushback that you have received in maybe trying to convince people that buying fair trade produce, not just bananas, is maybe the right way to buy produce? What has some of that pushback been for you?
The pushback is not from end customers. Because bananas have been so cheap for so long, retailers have kind of absorbed the idea that bananas are what's called a KVI, a known value item, meaning that we buy them on such a frequent basis that from one week to the next, or from one store to the other, we're going to remember the price of that banana.
That's so interesting.
And
So
See,
true,
I don't
though.
think I remember the price at all.
Well,
And I went to the grocery store
this is what we
yesterday.
have to communicate to our retailers, is that we out here in the great wide world, we are not as obsessed with banana prices as retailers think we are. And there's a lot of fear on the part of retailers that if they increase the price of bananas, there's going to be a wholesale exodus of customers from their store to their lower priced competitors. In fact, they will probably shower you with praise, respect you for the ethical sourcing, the responsible procurement policy you've put in place, that says, our community is a global community, and
Right.
if we don't pay fairly for our commodities, who's going to grow our bananas in a generation?
And isn't it so interesting how climate storytelling could be so powerful in a moment like that? Like, could you imagine a nice, beautiful stand of bananas at your grocery store, and there's a sign next to it that said, wow, this did not exploit people. This did
Yeah.
not do that. This is exactly where that extra 20 cents you're paying is going to. Because
Yeah.
for me, if I saw something like that, if I had that context, it would be a no-brainer. And I feel like for so many consumers, they just need to understand that storytelling behind their supply chain, and so many of those decisions would change.
Yeah.
Which is what we're doing here.
Yes.
We're being transparent.
Well, you're on our side, and we really appreciate that. Any, shares of this podcast, all of that is so important for changing those mindsets. And
Definitely.
we're patient. We understand that it's hard to change a business model, but we see a lot of younger buyers, especially who get it, and who want to be banana badasses too. This is the
I want to be a banana
banana
badass.
badass.
I want to be a banana badass too.
Well, you get to be a banana badass when you jump on the Equifruit fair trade train.
I
And
love it.
speaking of a badass milestone that you guys just hit, you have, as a company, contributed over 5 million US dollars paid to banana farmers in fair trade premiums.
Yeah.
And we've touched a little bit about like the debate on why banana prices haven't risen with inflation because of retailers and suppliers maybe feeling that fear of losing customers to other stores and competitors. Are there any other factors that we're missing that tells a story of why banana prices are so low historically?
Yeah, I mean, the initial business model of the large banana companies, and mostly the ones that set the stage, was the United Fruit Company, which is now trading as Chiquita. Their initial business model was to source as cheaply as possible on all possible metrics, and then make margin on huge volumes, but also sell them at low cost. And to do this, they partnered with retailers to market bananas as this cheap snack, and they succeeded in that. They succeeded in establishing the banana as the most consumed fruit in North America.
Isn't that so fascinating, though, how marketing has really infiltrated every part of the consumer mindset? Like, Cecilia and I have talked about this a little bit with the farm to table movement, too, but I would have never thought that these companies would have infiltrated through propaganda, essentially, telling
Yeah.
people, hey, this is the it snack, this is the
No,
cheap one.
literally.
But yeah, like these are not native species
No.
to the United States or North America by any means. And also bananas, they have had such cultural significance for so many communities, like whether they're like through the plantain form or bananas themselves. But we talk a lot about on the series about how a lot of the commodities that we're speaking on have deep roots to like land grabs and colonization and just essentially the genocide of many populations. And it's really interesting to really take a deep dive into this history.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely the case for the banana. This was economic imperialism, and the growers and workers on these large banana plantations were entirely dispensable. There was no expectation of a different kind of pay structure. I don't think there was any need to do that in the minds of the early banana companies. And we just see the world differently now.
Yeah, no. It appears that when consumers pick a fair trade banana, they are valuing the people of the supply chain. And we've talked a lot about what equality can mean for producers at this stage of the supply chain. And curious to hear what your thoughts are on how their community benefits aside from just wages and maybe their housing, like with what you talked about before. But what can a consumer really see as the value of picking a fair trade banana over just
Yeah.
another banana?
So, something I should explain is that often consumers don't actually have a choice. The choice is made for them by the supermarket buyer. That
Okay.
essentially banana contracts are binary. Either we are going to get the business or we're not. There's not generally a choice. There's not generally like,
Interesting.
here's a conventional banana and here's a conventional fair
Okay.
trade banana.
Oh,
And so
I didn't know that
we
actually.
don't, if the buyer hasn't had the courage to level up their banana category with fair trade, you're not going to be making any choice at all.
Oh
It's not in your
no.
hands.
No, it's not in
Wow.
your
Oh,
hands. That buyer has an enormous amount of power.
right. Retailers seem to hold a lot of the power in deciding, if they're going to sell fair trade or not, if they're willing to contribute to this fair trade, the benefit of what it actually is.
Basically, if they have the courage to raise banana prices.
Okay. So
That's the thing. Generally, people are supportive of our mission, understand it, but they're held back by a fear
this fear,
of
right.
raising banana prices.
The bottom line, right?
But that's why most
So,
of our marketing right now is concentrated on B2B. If we don't convince
ah.
that buyer that fair trade is the way to go, you as consumers will never get that choice. You'll never be in a
Oh
grocery store and be
no,
like,
we want the choice.
yeah, I know that
So
you
what can
do.
we do as consumers? What can the
Right. That was
consumers
my
do?
question as well.
What can the definers do to put pressure on buyers?
Anything.
Well, first of all, share the podcast, tell your friends, talk about this, read a little bit more about the banana industry, write to your grocery store. Really, they want to hear your voice. They want to know, they want
Okay.
reassurance that if they take this step, that people will keep showing up and buying bananas, even at this higher price point.
All right. So, definers, you heard Jenny. Get out the pens and papers. We're all going to write to our general
Yeah.
store managers today after hearing
I'm
this
actually going
episode.
to. This is amazing.
Yeah, I think we really have to put the emphasis on where the balance of power is right now. Most people focus on the big bad banana companies, and that's not really productive because some of the behavior of the major banana companies is influenced by this dance with retailers who are
Wow.
unwilling to raise the price. And so they will keep pushing on their supply chains, squeezing their supply chains. If you speak to the big banana companies, they will say, we would love retailers to raise the prices too. We would like to pay more to growers. But what distinguishes Equifruit from those companies is that they're not putting on their big boy pants.
You tell him, Jenny.
They're not sticking their neck out to tell these uncomfortable truths. You know,
No, and we appreciate you for sticking your neck out telling these
thank
uncomfortable
you. But,
truths. Honestly,
you
seriously.
have to, systems are not going to change if there's not a little discomfort. And
Of
Yeah.
course.
it's very uncomfortable, even for Equifruit to do this, to be sticking our neck out and then turning around and wanting to work with retailers. We want to work with retailers to make fair trade bananas work for them, for their customers. We want fair trade to be fair along the supply chain, and that includes retailers. We just have
Yeah.
to give them the confidence that they have this power to change and that people will follow and admire them for that bold move.
Yes, an example.
Great action item.
course.
And I'd like to emphasize to the diviners listening, do not underestimate the power of a single letter to a produce manager
sure.
because we get feedback and emails, and that means a lot to us because produce
cry every
managers are
time.
not they're not like, typically hearing from their consumers that much. Like sometimes I don't even think about what happens on the back end of my grocery store. But to hear a message like this from a eager consumer can really make the world of a difference. So don't underestimate how powerful your voice is in this movement. It's very important. And Jenny,
Great point.
if I may offer, like, as a consumer, something I'd like to see that maybe you could relay back to some of your partners is, if they are selling fair trade bananas in their stores, can they please put a label on that?
So, in terms of labeling, our organic bananas have banding around the bunch of bananas, and we are calling out on that banding that these are fair trade bananas. The name Equifruit is there. We always, on our band, have a little bit of a joke. Like the ones we have right now say the only banana to binge watch, and then there's copy that says, how is it that we can watch, some dumb series for 8 hours a day? Let's spend 8 minutes learning about farmers being paid fairly. So our product will tell you that it is fair trade. So our signage usually is very, very short and sweet. Like one says, has an orange asking a banana, the orange says, why fair trade? And the banana answers, farmers got to get paid. Or
That's cute. I like that.
we have another sign that says, I like long walks, good wine, and paying farmers fairly.
Love
Oh,
it.
I love them.
Yeah.
I love them. They feel very targeted towards my type of humor.
I mean, the world is heavy enough as it is, right?
Of course.
2026 so far has been so upsetting, so heavy.
Very
A
interesting
roller
year.
coaster.
And we
Day 19.
come at this with humor. We try to bring a little bit of humor. It kind of disarms us, it makes us laugh, and it makes us open to a more serious message. We always bring the message back to paying farmers fairly.
Yeah, I mean, essentially that's what we're doing with this podcast here.
Amazing.
We're making everything, we're trying to keep it lighthearted and make some jokes along the way on these serious
Exactly.
topics. But yeah, we've talked a lot about fair trade, what values we get from that, the power imbalance in the supply chain, inequalities. Now, I'm curious to see what trends you are seeing right now or would like to see in the banana industry that show forward momentum, whether in pricing models, adoption of certificates like fair trade, consumer expectations. What are some trends that you would like to see in 2026 that maybe would make the year feel happier?
Well, over in Europe, there are many national groupings of retailers who are working together to ensure that there are living wages being paid in their banana supply chains. There's a group in Germany, in Belgium, in the Netherlands, and in the UK. And this is amazing because these are basically competitors. These are big name grocery store chains who have become aware of this problem and who are working together in a pre-competitive way to
Okay.
develop a methodology that farms can follow and that they can report on to ensure that workers are being paid living wages. And this gives me a lot of hope and inspiration because it shows me that retail can evolve and that they
Right.
feel that they have the confidence of their consumers to do this right thing. Fair trade is much more advanced in Europe. You know, if you look at the UK, it's about 1 in 3 bananas is fair trade. In Switzerland, it's over 50%. In the States, we're at less than 1%. In Canada, about 3 or 4%. But you know, when you see that other markets have evolved, I derive hope from that.
Of course. I mean, for a good chunk of this conversation, we were talking about the power that retailers hold and this fear that they have. And to see retailers in Europe, get over, essentially get over this fear and put trust in their consumers and pay back to the producers is for sure a beacon of hope in this industry.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how much further we can even go from that. Yeah, this leads us to the next question. Nathan, do you want to take it from here?
Looking to 2026 and beyond, Jenny, I'm really curious what's next for Equifruit, especially in the US market, where fair trade bananas are still a relatively small share of the produce.
1%, like she said.
We've invested a lot in the US market, and we are really excited to see at the retail level, at the buyer level, that brand awareness of Equifruit has really, really, really increased. And
Yay!
yeah, that's fantastic. And
Woo!
that's definitely a first step in that mindset change.
For sure.
We have a small program with Costco in the New York area.
Yay.
And we're going to be starting another program with a retailer. I can't unveil the name of that retailer
Secret
just yet.
still.
But if you follow Equifruit on our
Ooh,
socials,
Cool.
on LinkedIn, or follow me, Jenny Coleman, specifically on LinkedIn, trust me, you will know we will yell all about this, shout about it.
oh my gosh, I'm
I'm
excited to
fascinated.
find
I'm
out who it
based out of New York
is.
City, so I'm going to be
Oh,
keeping an eye out for that
sister,
news.
you're gonna be in luck. So that's coming up, and we just know that there's going to be a domino effect. A lot of retailers have said to us they don't want to be the first, but they're going to be a swift second. And so I think we just have to find those leaders in the market, and then others will follow. We're quite certain.
Show them there's nothing to be scared about.
That's right.
Yes, no, I agree. A lot of times, like you mentioned, change is uncomfortable and it takes time and it takes convincing. And I think the best way to do it is by having someone lead by example. Let them know, hey, this can be done a better way. It's profitable. People are happy with us. Consumers love it.
Yeah.
Great.
So I'm excited to hear what your announcement will be in
We'll
the
be keeping
coming
an eye
months.
out.
Yes, and
Yeah,
we will let the
please
definers know when that comes out.
Please follow us.
For
Our
sure.
Instagram account, which I can take no credit for. I have this wonderful team who's doing this.
Yes,
And we
drop
do
that
all of
link.
our marketing in-house, by the way. So the Instagram, TikTok, they're very funny, good to follow.
Oh,
And
I'll have to follow you guys on
Perfect.
TikTok.
yeah,
Sounds like
the
fun.
businessy
Yes.
side is more LinkedIn.
We'll definitely give you guys a follow.
Yeah.
Last but not least, Jenny, we asked this question to every guest that we have on the podcast, and it is the party fact question.
A silly
So if you were
question.
at a party and you wanted to shock people with a fun fact, what would you drop?
About bananas. Fun fact about
Oh man, I
bananas.
am just no fun at parties. I'm no
I
fun
find that hard to
at
believe.
parties.
Come on. You're a banana badass.
I'm a total killjoy when it comes to bananas because, in fact, we have a whole series on our Instagram account about how we try and control ourselves when we go to somebody's house and we can see non-fair trade bananas on their counter.
Okay. So let's pivot the question. What is the one thing, if you could only say one thing when you go to someone's house and you see non-fair trade bananas, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I think we should just remember that the low price of bananas that we see is really a subsidy which has been granted to us by workers, small growers, through low wages, poor working conditions, and living the effects of toxic environmental practices which have been taken to increase yields. And we don't feel good about that.
We don't feel good about that.
No,
And
we
I
don't
actually
like
have
that.
a
We don't
party
stand.
fact that I'd like for you to confirm, Jenny, if possible.
Okay.
Ooh, Netra!
So I heard that it's actually best when you're at the grocery store to pick up the single spare bananas that are not attached to a bunch because they often get thrown away because most people like to get a nice clean bunch. So I've been doing that every time I go to the store to save these bananas from the landfill. Is that true?
Ah, poor little bananas.
Actually, I don't know that. I've certainly seen pick me, I'm single baskets of
That's cute. This Valentine's Day, I'm gonna go pick them.
Our organic bananas are sold by the bunch with this band around it. And so if somebody takes the band off and rips off a couple of bananas, they're probably going to be sold at the cash. They're probably going to be rung in as conventional bananas and not organic bananas. And that really messes up a retailer's data system because then they don't know that there's been demand. There's the organic bananas have somehow disappeared and they can't trace that those organics have been sold as conventional. That's kind of a detailed answer, but no grocery store likes those single bananas. Just buy the bunch.
Buy the bunch. Got it.
Oh, poor little single bananas.
Well, Jenny, this has been so insightful.
Well,
Thank you so much for sharing your experience and being on the podcast with us.
it's my pleasure, and I look forward to meeting your listeners through LinkedIn or on social media.
Thank you again for sharing your banana expertise with us. I hope everyone goes out and buys a fair trade banana and also sends a letter to their grocery store manager.
Yes, if you're in Canada, look for them across your stores. If you're in the US, let's push a little bit.
Yes.
Let's push our produce managers.
Keep pushing for change here. Thank you,
Great.
Jenny.
Thank you both.
Wow, what an interview.
What an interview.
It really got me thinking, where does this leave us? Look, we are not here to tell you to never eat a banana again. That's not realistic, and frankly, we need our potassium. But individual consumer choices matter, definers. We've always said that here on the podcast. They influence greater changes within systems. And obviously, we all know that they're not the only thing that is going to fix the system that is and has been inherently broken for a while.
What I basically heard from that, Netra, was that we are all influencers. Did I hear that right?
Yes, and we're going to, what, Cecilia? Vote with our what?
Our dollar! Holla!
I need to put that on a t-shirt. That needs to go
No,
on a t-shirt.
literally. Okay, but we do think it's worth understanding what we are participating in. When you buy a banana, you're buying into a legacy that includes some dark history. That doesn't make you a bad person, of course. It just makes you someone living in a globalized economy where these dynamics are baked into logistics.
The good news is that there are better options emerging.
Woohoo!
Fair trade certified bananas ensure workers get better wages and conditions. Organic bananas reduce pesticide use, and fair trade organic bananas do both. Companies like Equifruit are working on more sustainable, transparent practices. As we've heard from today, love Jenny and her team. And scientists are racing to develop new banana varieties that are disease resistant and genetically diverse.
However, the fundamental problem remains here. Our food system prioritizes profit and convenience over people and planet. Bananas are just one example, and until we address this fundamental issue, until we're willing to pay the true cost of our food, until we demand better labor practices and environmental standards, until we hold corporations accountable for their legacies,
Yes!
these problems will continue to persist.
And here's what we want you to take away from this, Definers. The next time you grab a banana, take a second. Think about the journey that it took, the history that was behind it. Think about the soil it grew in, the chemicals used to protect it, the plastic wrapped around it that really pisses Nathra off, and the history behind the company that sold it. And also remember what Jenny said. Contact your produce managers, contact your office suppliers, and ask them to make better choices. Ask them to choose Equifruit or other fair trade suppliers.
Retweet. The banana is a miracle of global logistics, not to be corny. It's also a symbol of how we can do better with how we produce and consume food. Both things can be true.
Thanks for sticking with us through this heavy episode, Definers. We know Banana Republic history and corporate terrorism funding aren't exactly light topics, but we think it's important to understand the hidden cost of our everyday choices. And we'll continue to talk on those topics and be real with you about the foods that we're eating and the supply chains and commodities that we're participating in.
And if this episode made you think differently about bananas or any food in general, share it with someone, DM us, write us an email. We would love to talk with you guys further about any of these problems or facts we've talked about today. These conversations matter.
Right. And as always, thanks for tuning in to Sustainability Defined. I'm your host, Nathra.
I'm your host, Cecilia. We'll see you next time.